Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to a very special live stream. I am not talking about WWE or AEW, but rather Impact Wrestling. That's right, the first Impact Wrestling live stream or video dedicated to Impact in a very long time here on the No DQ YouTube channel. This was a pretty buzzworthy show. A lot of people wondering who would show up at Slammiversary. Several free agents available to appear. Was this the beginning of a new era for Impact Wrestling? Are they back in the game? That's the question. I'm here to break it down. Shout out to everybody in the chat room for tuning in and participating. Thank you to everybody watching this, whether it's live or on demand. And if you enjoy this video, click on that subscribe button and tell a friend. We kicked off the pay-per-view with a video package, and it was announced that Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows have officially joined Impact Wrestling. The news actually broke at midnight heading into Saturday. Gallows and Anderson did their podcast, talked about their WWE departure, talked about Paul Heyman. If you missed it, you could check out the highlights and details, all the newsworthy stuff over at NoDQ.com. We had David Penzer from WCW and TNA back in the day as the ring announcer for this show. We kicked off with our first match, which was the Rascals. Now, I have to let you guys know here, this is the first Impact show I've watched since the pandemic began. The first of anything from Impact, including YouTube clips. So I'm not really up to speed with a lot of the storylines and a lot of the new wrestlers. Rascals, my impression of them, just random indie tag team that Impact signed. They had an open challenge, and their opponents, the returning Motor City Machine Guns, Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley. Both of them seemed like they were just ready to get back into the groove. It felt like they were tagging yesterday. They were right in there. Fun match here to kick off the pay-per-view. This was apparently Sabin's first match since January of 2019, so about a year and a half of him not wrestling. Again, felt like he just came in and was right back at it, like he did not miss any time. We did have some production issues during this show, and that is one of the negatives of watching Impact. I'll just say it right now. Watching this show, it was a little difficult at times. Number one, because the production values, it's a bare bones production, and it really shows, and no crowd. At least with AEW and even WWE now, we have wrestlers acting as the crowd, and that made it really tough. And that was one of the factors in me just not watching Impact anymore, because as it was just trying to follow Impact with WWE and AEW and NWA Power for a while, it was at the bottom of my priority list. And the pandemic just pretty much sealed the fate for Impact as far as me being a viewer goes. But I did tune into the show, and the opening match was fun. Motor City Machine Guns picked up the victory. And then we had a singles match for the TNA World title. Tommy Dreamer, who was still wrestling, versus Moose. Dreamer had a t-shirt which was a reference to Dusty Rhodes and Terry Funk, the Sucks Eggs t-shirt. Moose is calling himself the Wrestling God, which last time I checked was JBL's catchphrase. This was essentially a hardcore match. You had trash cans, you had kendo sticks, you had a bunch of chairs in the ring. Moose jumped off the top rope and Tommy Dreamer caught him with a cutter through a trash can. And then there were a bunch of chairs in the ring. And Tommy Dreamer eventually brought in some thumbtacks. Moose hit a low blow and then tried to shove Dreamer's face into the tacks. This was a great camera shot with a close-up of Dreamer just agonizing as he was just a mere inch or two away from his face going into the thumbtacks. Eventually, Moose was able to do it. He slammed Dreamer's head into the tacks and then hit the lights-out spear. 1, 2, 3 to pick up the victory. Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, "Hey Rift Shady, have you seen 8 Mile?" I already talked about this on the last stream, but thank you for the super chat. I'm no selling the off-topic super chats for the record, guys. I appreciate them, but want to keep this review moving forward. And then we had Johnny Swinger arriving at the building, but the interviewer was expecting the Good Brothers to show up. And then we had a women's gauntlet match, which was a little bit of a mess, in my opinion. One of the weaker matches on the show, maybe the weakest. A lot of women that I'm not familiar with, although Kylie Rae was one of the first 2 entrants in the match. And this guy, Johnny Bravo, came out dressed up as Taya Valkyrie, and then later he came out dressed up as Rosemary. And yeah, I was like, what's going on here? So we had the match come down to Kylie Rae and Taya Valkyrie, the real one. Kylie Rae ended up picking up the victory after hitting a destroyer. So I do like this. First person in the match lasts the whole match and picks up the victory. And really, she probably has the most stock of any of the women in here. I mean, she did appear in AEW for a brief period. And she kind of has a good look to her, you know, has that Bayley look, but a bit of a different character. So I was fine with her picking up the win in this match. And then we had our first big surprise of the evening, although probably not a huge surprise. Oh, and Cindy brings up Katie Forbes' Twerk Fest. Yeah, that was kind of weird. Heath Slater is in Impact Wrestling, but he's not Heath Slater. He's just Heath. Not even Heath Miller. He's just Heath. So Cody Rhodes just became Cody, and now Heath Slater is simply Heath. There were some microphone issues. Again, low budget production. Kind of made Impact look very low rent. When Heath Slater, who's legitimately the biggest star on this show, I mean, he was just on Raw a couple weeks ago. He's cutting this promo and his mic's kind of going out. He's talking about how he saw a vacant spot for the world title, but before he could have a chance to make an impact, we had a guy named Rohit Raju come out, and I was almost thinking, like, is this supposed to be Impact's Jinder Mahal coming out to confront Heath Slater, you know, 3-man band reference. I don't know if it was done intentionally or not. But he was not happy about Heath Slater coming in and just automatically getting an opportunity. And then Heath Slater ended up beating this guy up, of course. Now, one thing I did not like about this was he had to mention that Slater got beat really quickly in his last world title match, of course, basically getting squashed by Drew McIntyre on Raw. I think it would have been a good idea to not reference that Heath Slater basically got squashed. I would not have done that, but whatever. So Slater cleaned house and had his big moment standing tall. Cindy with a $2 super chat says, Heath Slater crashed the Fight TV stream for 2 minutes. I saw some people mentioning this. I did not have any issues with the stream whatsoever, so I was happy about that. And Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat, thank you for that, says, Heath Slater needs a great match to get over with people. Well, we'll see. He definitely had some star presence on this show, but again, he's fresh off of WWE television, so that's to be expected. We had Chris Bay, somebody I'm not familiar with, versus Willie Mack for the X Division Championship. TJS just left a $5 super chat, and TJS, since it is kind of off topic here, I will get to your question at the end of the video. Again, off-topic questions I'm trying to not let myself get too distracted with, but I will get to your question. So Chris Bay versus Willie Mack for the X Division title. Willie Mack was the champion going into this match. And Josh Matthews did a decent job of introducing new fans to the concept of the X Division. Nothing really different about it. It's the no limits, yada, yada, yada. Basically a cruiserweight division, but not really. So pretty solid match here from these guys. Bay jumped off the top rope and Mack countered it with a sit-down power bomb, and he did an exploder to Bay into the corner. Basically, the story of the match was Chris Bay, the smaller guy, trying to do the high-flying moves, Willie Mack relying on the power moves. And then the referee ended up getting hit during the melee, and Bay raked the eyes of Willie Mack and then hit a springboard cutter to capture the X Division Championship. So good match from these guys. Chris Bay looked pretty impressive in this one, I gotta say. And that rhymed. Did not intend for that. We had Heath Slater reuniting with Rhino backstage, and Scott D'Amore showed up and mentioned that Slater's shirt, it says free agent. That means Slater does not work there. And D'Amore mentioned that it's a closed set, there's a pandemic, and Slater needs to leave the building. Rhino responded by saying, don't worry about it, and basically invited Slater to appear on this coming Tuesday's edition of Impact Wrestling. Next up, we had the Impact Tag Team titles. The North, Josh Alexander and Ethan Page against Ken Shamrock and Sami Callihan. Callihan was in the match most of the time. Shamrock would tag in for the hot tag and did a couple of things here and there. And then at one point, he went for a dive and completely crashed and burned. And there was one point where Shamrock gave one of the guys a belly-to-belly over the top rope, and then he put the ankle lock, I think it was Alexander, and then he put the ankle lock on Page, and then Alexander ended up putting the ankle lock on Callihan. So we had dual ankle locks, and then Callihan came in with a cutter, and then Shamrock put the ankle lock on Alexander, but then Callihan accidentally got knocked into Shamrock, and this is when things started to fall apart for Shamrock and Callihan. They started having a heated back and forth argument. Then they managed to briefly get back on track, but then Shamrock accidentally kicked Callihan, and then we had Shamrock with a super belly-to-belly that knocked Alexander for a loop literally to the outside of the ring, so Shamrock was not able to put him away. Shamrock missed the dive, as I mentioned earlier, and then the North hit a double team move to pin Shamrock, retaining the tag team titles. And then after the match, they cut a promo and basically talked about how great they are. They've been champions for the past year now. Motor City Machine Guns came out to confront the champs, and Sabin said that the greatest tag team doesn't need to constantly remind everyone that they're the greatest. Motor City Machine Guns then revealed that this coming Tuesday on Impact Wrestling, they will be getting a title match against the North. I do like that Impact built up some segments for Tuesday, so any new viewers watching this will be interested in tuning in perhaps to see the follow-up, and I think I will. I think I will check out Impact Wrestling this week and see what they're up to. So, hats off to Impact. You know, they got me hooked. You know, they're reeling me in at least for 1 week to see what they do next. And there's more. We got some more happenings on this show. Rich Swann was backstage. He was on crutches. He's been out of action for a while. He said he's going to be paying attention to the world title match. He's very curious to see what happens, and he plans on coming for that championship. We then had the Knockouts Championship match. Jordynne Grace defending against Dionna Perazzo, who just recently debuted for Impact Wrestling. She was in NXT, of course. She appeared on Raw earlier this year. Because she was part of NXT and she got cut, it was only 30 days, so she was able to debut for Impact before everybody else that got released on April 15th did. Pretty solid match between these two. I gotta say, they had a very good match here. Back and forth between these two. Submissions exchanged. But at one point, Grace hurt her arm, and then Perazzo put on a double armbar submission, and Grace tapped out. So we got a new Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion. Good stuff here from the ladies. I enjoyed it. And then we had our main event, which was a not four-way match, but a five-way match. So the participants, and let me make it clear here, I'm not familiar with a couple of these guys. Ace Austin, don't know anything about him. A guy named Trey, not the most marketable name in the world. And Eddie Edwards, who I haven't seen in a while, and he looks totally different. I don't know if it's in a good way, because he kind of looks like one of those CAW wrestlers you would make, you know, guys with the jean shorts and the black tank top and the mohawk hair, the funny hair, whatever. So yeah, I'm not sure I was a big fan of the look, but I mean, it's a pretty drastic change from what I remember from him a couple of years ago. And then the fourth participant. Now, keep in mind, this was advertised as a four-way match. The fourth person was Rich Swann. That's right. Rich Swann was pretending to be hurt. He was recovered, and he came out, and people on Twitter were not amused by this. You know, they were thinking it was going to be EC3 or, you know, one of the released WWE guys. So kind of funny here that Impact would do this, because the fifth guy came out, and that was a former WWE guy, Eric Young. Not EC3, but Eric Young making his return to Impact Wrestling. I just find it funny because Impact put this together knowing the fans would crap on Rich Swann coming out there. I feel bad for Rich Swann. I mean, he was put in this position where the fans are like, oh, come on, give me a break here. So anyways, I thought this was a great match. I thought this was a really fun match to watch. Eric Young did great, showed a lot of intensity. Rich Swann looked great. And the guys I'm not as familiar with, Ace Austin, he looked good. Trey looked good for the time he was in there. And Eddie Edwards looked good too. Everybody worked well in this match. I enjoyed it. Ace Austin has this sidekick, bodyguard type guy, Madman Fulton, who got kicked out early on. And then Eric Young got busted open by his eye. That was pretty brutal, but Eric just kept going. Impact did not pull a WWE where they had to stop the match or have Eric Young on the sidelines for 5 minutes. He just kept going. So anyways, pretty cool sequence here where Trey basically rolled into Eric Young, and Eric Young hit his pile driver, and it was a pretty badass pile driver. I mean, it was a jumping pile driver, and it looked really cool. Eric Young hit this pile driver, pinned Trey. Trey was the first person out. This was an elimination match, I should say. I don't think I mentioned that. Apparently, we have a lot of trolls in the chat room here. Hey, bring them on. Thank you, Jeff Meacham from the Jeff Meacham Network for handling some of the trolls tonight. Caitlin already fell asleep, so she's unable to help out with the moderation, but thank you, Jeff. Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, if it wasn't for COVID, Rusev would have come out. Not necessarily. I still think Rusev's going to end up in AEW, but that's just my gut feeling. Back to the match here. There was a sequence where Eddie Edwards and Ace Austin were on the top rope, and then Eric Young picked up Rich Swann and powerbombed Swann into the other two guys. Eddie Edwards and Ace Austin fell off the top rope, crashed through a table. Got to say, I've not seen that one before. I did like that. And then Rich Swann was basically completely out. He was just laying there. And this reminded me a lot of Bret Hart versus Diesel from Survivor Series 1995, where Rich Swann was basically dead there and Eric Young was just getting a little bit overconfident, too cocky. And then all of a sudden, Swann countered the pile driver, rolled him up, scored the 1-2-3 pinfall. Eric Young eliminated from the match. Eric Young basically snapped. He destroyed the knee of Rich Swann. He grabbed the chair, did the Brian Pillman, what Steve Austin did to Brian Pillman with the steel chair, and just left Swann there laying. Swann would not refuse, or I should say he would not give up. He refused to give up, and he continued in the match, but Ace Austin got back in, and Swann ended up being pinned, although Swann did get a couple of near falls on Austin. It was finally down to Eddie Edwards and Ace Austin. It went back and forth. They each kicked out of their finishers, and then Eddie hit a second Boston knee party and then another move to put away Ace Austin and become the new Impact Wrestling World Champion. After the match, Madman Fulton came back out, attacked him, and then all of a sudden, the Good Brothers, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, fresh off of their WWE run, they were at WrestleMania. They came out and they teased an alliance with Ace Austin, but then, of course, attacked them, sent them packing, and then the three of them, Eddie Edwards and the Good Brothers, celebrated. They had some beers. All was right in the world. But then, just as the pay-per-view was going off the air, we had an EC3 promo. Yes, EC3 is back in Impact Wrestling. Pretty much expected, although I was figuring he would be in the world title match. Overall, pretty solid show from Impact Wrestling. I did enjoy it. I will check out the next Impact Wrestling show to see the follow-up. You got some fresh faces in there. You got the Good Brothers. You got EC3. You got the Motor City Machine Guns. You got Heath Slater. You got some new blood in there to freshen things up. They got a little bit more star power now. There's still a lot of guys watching this show that I feel like, they don't really stand out at all that much. But Impact does have some new blood, and that's a positive. Good show overall. And I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll be able to build their brand up again. They got their next pay-per-view in October, Bound for Glory. We'll see if they can keep the momentum going. Only time will tell, but definitely a thumbs-up show. Probably give it a solid B as far as the letter grade goes. A good pay-per-view, but I don't think I would put it at the level of like Double or Nothing or some of the better WWE pay-per-views of the past year. But it was still good. It was still a good show. And Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, seriously, what went wrong with EC3's career in WWE? That's a question a lot of us are wondering to this day, you know. EC3, he's built like a Greek god. He can talk. He's a decent wrestler, not a great wrestler, but he's good enough. You would think he's the type of guy Vince would love, and for whatever reason, it did not pan out. The Game is on 100 with a $2 super chat says, the only place EC3 is relevant. Ouch. That might be the savage line of the night. Michael Wayne with a C+, Dr. NXT Scorpio with a C+, Cindy gives it a solid B, and More Faves with a C-, Matt Helms with a B, and Mr. Heavy Metal Hero Dude with a C+, and Maniac Mayhem 203 with a B-, and Search One with a B, D. Martin 5th with a B, and Lucci Club Studios with a B+, and Anthony with a B+, Smith's Grove with a B, and Caleb Jacobs with a B. So pretty good ratings from you guys, and seems like a decent amount of people checked out this show, although I don't know how many actually bought the pay-per-view, but worth the $40 with TGS. Confession to make. I got Fight TV credits, so I actually did not pay for this pay-per-view. But I would say if I had paid $40, I would have been moderately satisfied. Again, I don't think I would have been nearly as satisfied as with Double or Nothing, and I paid for Double or Nothing, and I felt completely satisfied with paying $50 for that. And speaking of TJS, to answer his question now, his $5 super chat, he says, what year was TNA in its prime in your opinion? They had the most momentum in 2006 to 2009 than AEW has ever had. Disagree with that. He says, Tenay West were as good as JR and the King. Your thoughts? I disagree that TNA ever had more momentum than AEW. AEW in one show drew more people than any TNA show. TNA's biggest show, I'm not sure if it was the Alamo Dome where they drew like 6,000 or 7,000, but I mean, they never passed 10,000 people in the building, to my knowledge. And AEW sold out the MGM Grand. So, yeah, I would not say that at all. Yeah, the TV viewership is not what TNA was doing, but TNA had a problem with turning their television viewers into paid customers. AEW, they're doing very well for themselves, and their pay-per-view buy rates have been solid. As far as when TNA was in their prime, probably 2009 with the Main Event Mafia. To me, that's when I felt like TNA was the closest to being able to compete with WWE. And of course, they did try, but they made the mistake of bringing in Hogan and Bischoff, and that's when it all pretty much went south. But I would say 2009 was maybe the peak period for TNA as far as just the strength of the brand. Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, at least EC3 can get himself over, unlike Ricochet. Man, poor Ricochet. He's really getting the brunt of the jokes now. At least EC3's getting a bit of a push, even if he is a big fish in a smaller pond. And Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, Cody is way more likable than Jeff Jarrett. Yeah, I would say that too. And thank you guys for the super chats. Marcus Meatcalf with the $2 super chat says, what happened to Ring of Honor? Is it just Marty Scurll? Well, that's definitely a bad sign for ROH's future, what's going on with Marty Scurll and the whole speaking out movement. Yeah, they're kind of in a bad spot right now. And Joey Ryan recently published a 1-hour video with his response to the speaking out accusations made against him. You can check that out. Some information and a transcription of a little bit of what he said. Again, it was like a 60-minute video. You can check that out over at NoDQ.com. And that's all I got for tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video. Maybe I'll do more Impact videos. Leave a comment. Let me know. Curious to get your feedback on it. And stay tuned. I'll be back for the Extreme Rules recap, talking about the swamp fight and all that good stuff. So stay tuned for that. Be safe, stay positive, and I will see you guys next time.